Hi, everyone. My name is Jason.
I'm a teen.
And welcome to the Elevated Convo podcast. For those that are new here, welcome. In this podcast, Mateen and I tackle questions that listeners submit. They're typically contemporary problems that people have in modern day life. But what we like to do here is try to find spiritual solutions to these contemporary problems. We pull in wisdom quotes from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of religions, and even secular philosophers as well. And we found that a lot of these problems, even though they seem new, they're actually quite old. And you can find quotes that are thousands of years old that sound like they were written yesterday, talking about some of these problems. So today we have a write-in from James. James is concerned about his phone use. He's talking about how much he uses his phone, what content he's viewing on his phone. He talks about this idea of a spiritual diet. He thinks it's a bit, sort of out of alignment. And in this episode, we're going to talk about, some stats behind phone use. It's unfortunately a very common problem that we see in modern day society, especially in the Western world. We're going to talk about, the idea of a spiritual diet. What does that mean? How does it affect us? And lastly, we're going to share some practical research-based tips on how to cut down on your phone use, if that's something you want to do. We're about to get into all that. Mateen, why don't you start by reading the letter?
Sounds good. This is from James. Hi, Mateen and Jason. I'm worried a bit about how much I've been using my phone lately. I find myself scrolling a lot during the day, and it seems like whenever something challenging, boring, or just inconvenient comes up during the day, my first instinct is to reach for my phone. Sometimes it happens so quick that I don't even realize, and next thing I know, I've spent 30 minutes or even an hour just scrolling. The content I watch is pretty mindless. I don't necessarily think of it as harmful as I'm watching it, but I find that my brain kind of feels like mush afterwards. And in subtle ways, I feel like my spiritual diet is out of whack. I'm not sure how worried about it I should be. After all, my parents' generation had TV. They seem to be turned out quite fine. What do you think?
Yeah, well, thank you, James, for writing in. I'll cut to the chase. This is a major problem that I think a lot of people can relate to. I've got, stats to back it up. Let's just get right into it. There's this organization called Gallup. They're well known for different surveys. So they survey Americans periodically on technology use. So they did it in 2015. They did it again in 2022. And they asked people, do you think that your phone use is too much, that it's excessive, you're using your phone too much? And in 2015, 58% of people ages 18 through 29 said that their phone use was more than they wanted it to be. It was too much, which that's a lot. 58% is, the majority of young Americans feel that way. And then they redid it in 2022 and it jumped up to 81%. So
Wow.
8 out of 10 people think that their phone use is too much, which I think just speaks to how universal this problem is. That's why I just wanted to jump right into the stats and, say that, James, you're certainly not alone. The other really interesting thing about smartphones is it is the most widely adopted and fastest technology that we know of in human history. 98% of people age 18 through 29 in America own a smartphone. And I went and I looked at other, technologies in the past, TV, radio, the wheel, fire, all these technologies in the past.
Electricity.
Yeah, it took a long, long time to be adopted. Smartphones, within the span of 15 or so years, it went from basically 0% adoption to nearly universal.
Wow.
And I think that really speaks to how pervasive this problem is, and just a bit how unprecedented it is. We've seen examples of technologies in the past, sort of sweeping through our culture and people asking, is this the best? It's funny. You can find quotes about magazines. There were people in the early 20th and late 19th century, magazines are corrupting the minds of the youth, so it's always been a thing, but I think this time around it is especially pervasive and especially expeditious, the way that it's just swept through our culture.
I found some data as well. I was actually doing a presentation on this in my MBA class.
Oh, wow.
And, one of the stats was that what is the first thing people do when they get out of bed, right? What do they when they grab their phone? What is the first platform they go to? They're researching again, 18 to 29 year olds, and it's a very recent 2024 research done, and they find that 49%. When they reach their phone, they go on TikTok immediately. Then its next is about 39% is Instagram. And then after all of that, it's like the news, like, CNN and New York Times and Wall Street Journal type of things, or stocks and stuff like that. And that's, that's crazy, but the interesting is that, the individuals have done this, 98% or whatever, they know it's a problem. The fact that they're saying I'm using too much is
81%.
81%. Sorry, it's still a lot. 8 out of 10 is still a lot.
Yeah.
Another study shows that the average person spends 3 to 4 hours a day on their phone, and younger adults, which must be this age group that you talked about, often exceeds 5 to 6 hours. Are people not working? Like I'll be on Instagram like on my break, and I'll send a text to a friend or a meme to a friend, and within a second he likes it, and he's responding, he's sending me 10 more. I'm like, no, I'm on break, I don't want any more. That's just for a little bit. So I wonder, what are these people doing? Are they even working? So they're getting paid for this? Is there a job I don't know about? And so it's interesting, but having this struggle is not a weakness. We need to clearly say it. As we can see, a lot of people are involved in this. But I think it's a very modern test on mindfulness and our will. Do we have a will to stop? Are we mindful that it's an issue?
Yeah.
I have so many friends that have like 5 different passwords just to get into social media.
Okay.
Like through Apple, I guess. After the time exceeds, they go in there, and it's like there's like you have to put a code in. Then they put it in. Then it's like, are you sure you want to go in? And they put another code in. And after you do that, they'll say, are you sure, even the 3rd time? And by then, I think that's when the mindfulness kicks in. You're like, you're right. I'm not supposed to be doing this right now. So there's definitely an issue, and people are trying to fix it. But I understand, James. We understand you.
I mean, the way that I think about it is like, I feel like it's a bit of a trade-off where, it's basically, okay, you get to live in the 21st century. You get this amazing technology. It can do all this incredible stuff we could never dream of. Even 10, 15 years ago, the stuff we have now compared to then is mind-blowing.
Right.
So that's the pro. The con is that you have to learn how to use it effectively, right? Like, of course, our parents, like James mentioned, have, they had TV back in the day, right? And even before that, there was other forms of media, radio, stuff like that. But it was much less engaging, right? Your TV, you weren't lugging it with you every single place you go.
Right,
With your phone, you are. So as the technology gets better and more useful, I think it also can get sort of more potentially harmful. And that's the key trade-off. I feel like that's sort of the price of admission. If you want to live in this amazing hyper technology world, you have to learn, how to use the technology well, not let it consume you. I don't think it has to be that way. I don't think that's like a universal truth. I think that hopefully as humanity matures, we understand this technology more, we can build it with compassion instead of trying to like build it to suck people in. That's a whole nother thing we can talk about. Like, there are all these people at TikTok, Instagram, all these social media companies, PhDs making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And their objective, all these super smart people, is to get you to spend as much time as possible on the app.
Times you can, yeah.
And it's like, I'm picturing like in my head, like David versus Goliath, it's like, you're like this tiny, like this giant that is this social media company with tens of thousands of employees, all these incredibly smart people using all this research, all this psychology just to get you on that platform. Like, it's a very difficult battle, right?
Right. Yeah, and I feel like James and many of us, including ourselves, things like ChatGPT as an example. That's another thing that's on our phones. So constantly using it, but even that feels like my brain is actually going to mush. Mm-hmm. Like it's actually like going dead because I use it for everything. And so, I really believe that we have gems, we're all created with gems. We're all created noble. And these gems are like things like creativity, focus, reflection, prayer. When we focus on our social media and we focus on imitation, those gems sort of get thrown out the window. When I focus on ChatGPT on all my things, and when I write this and I write that, and I want to even a simple sentence to somebody, I go to ChatGPT to be like, how do I write this sentence without it coming off?
How many times have you used that when you're texting me?
That's actually all the time. That's what
I'm just
you're talking to Chat. You're not even talking to me anymore. And so it's like, literally I can go to sleep all day and be like, Chat, just answer it.
Wow.
But it's like, we're numbing those gems. We're numbing them. And so there's a quote by Baha'u'llah that says, let your vision be world embracing rather than confined to your own self.
Who's Baha'u'llah?
Oh, Baha'u'llah is the founding figure of the Baha'i faith. Actually today, which is Wednesday, October 22nd, is his birthday. So it's a pretty big deal. We celebrate it with a lot of festivities and love. But as much as I'd love to talk more about that, really this quote is so important. Like, let your vision be world embracing and not focus on yourself. And as we're getting further like into the 22nd century, the 23rd century, things are going to get crazy. I mean, Apple just came out with this like VR headset where they wanted you literally to have it on your head at all times. They even made a thing about it where you should record your kids growing up. You do this and do that, like with spatial video. What are you guys talking about? Do you want us to be living like this? And so,
yes.
Yes.
Have you seen WALL-E? That's what I'm picturing.
And as we get closer, it feels like that's going to be. We're all going to be sitting on these like floatable chairs and just be telling robots to tell us what to do. I mean, and they're making that. Robots are going to start doing this. I mean, we're going off topic, but it's getting into a point where life is going to become so easy.
Yeah.
That all you have to do is open up your phone and just click go.
Yeah. Well, I think, that kind of reiterates the point, right? Like there's all these people out there that are trying to build these services, so for social media, the goal is to use it as much as possible. But then you're right. There are these other, there's VR and AR hardware. They want you to be in there as much as possible. And there's all these really smart people that are building this future. And there are some upsides for sure. Like ChatGPT, can be a wonderful thing when applied correctly. But I think what you're hinting at is, there are these capacities that all of us have the ability to build, creativity, critical thinking, etc. And these technologies, one way or another, can deprive us of those capacities, or they let them atrophy. Like atrophy, like when you don't use a muscle at all, it atrophies, right? Like in WALL-E, all those people, their muscles and bones have atrophied because they haven't, remember, like he can't even stand. Remember
Thanks
that
for
part?
adding a SAT word. I didn't know
atrophy,
what that was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but I love that word because it's like that, I think, happens to our capacities. Just like if I never, ever moved this muscle, it would completely die because it's like use it or lose it. The same thing I think is true of these capacities. And yeah, it's very understandable that if you, are writing every single thing in your life with ChatGPT, not to call anyone out here, but if you are, then it's like that gets harder. Like let's say there's a ChatGPT outage, or you tell yourself one day, okay, I'm not going to do it. Like, you have to use your brain, and it's like, oh, I haven't used this part of my brain in like so long, like it's just so easy to go through the path of least resistance. And, once again, there's a trade-off there. We have to be mindful of how we're consuming that technology.
I say like our soul is like a garden. And if we leave it unattended, weeds grow. Things happen. And so, I mean, just look at like those apocalyptic movies, when the world around them, when humans aren't there to self-sustain and do all that kind of stuff, things start growing, animals start coming in. And, it kind of goes back to with our phones, we become so addicted. And so here's the real thing. People will say, are you anti-phone? No, we're not anti-phone. And phones are not the problem. Autopilot is. This idea that we get up and we do the same thing all over again is the issue. When life feels boring, I mean, literally, there's a ride at Universal in Orlando where you have to put your phone away because it goes upside down, and like, I think it's called Jurassic World. And you have to put your phone away for like an hour. You're standing in this line just like staring at each other. And it's like, it's so hard. Nobody has done it in a minute. Our phones are not there, so we're like playing like games with our hands. Like back in the day, we're playing footsie, we're doing random stuff because we just don't know what to do. And so it's such an interesting case. But people start getting creative. So they start playing games. They start talking to other people in the line. It becomes like we're actually one human family again.
Yeah.
And so, when we are uncomfortable, we're anxious, we naturally seek relief. We naturally try to go and find things to distract us from the uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
But that's what I say to James. I would say that, remind us that less noise in our lives is better.
Right.
Less ways is better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he talked about this idea of a spiritual diet, which I want to dive into for a second. I've got, a couple quotes to share. The first one's from the Bible. It's from Matthew 6:22. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. James was concerned about the content that he's consuming and how it affects him. I think this certainly speaks to that. And once again, like this is a 2,000-year-old quote, right? Phones were not even in the, hemisphere of what they could think about. But of course, the idea is still the same. The other idea, the other quote rather that I want to share is it's attributed to Abdu'l-Baha. Abdu'l-Baha is the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. And just quickly, Mateen and I are both Baha'is. We grew up Baha'i, but the Baha'i faith believes in the validity of all the major religions. So we get to pull in different quotes. For example, the Bible, I've studied that. So this quote is attributed to Abdu'l-Baha, and it really touches on this idea of spiritual diet. He says, "There is a kind of food which needs neither knife nor fork, and of which every one may partake with perfect ease and benefit. It is the food spiritual. This food brings life and stimulation instead of indolence and apathy. It brings peace and content to the one who partakes of it. The more food, the more joy and peace. For the spirit is always eager to furnish sustenance to the soul." Right. So, I mean, it's pretty clearly talking about this idea of a spiritual diet, this spiritual food. As far as, what is that spiritual food? All of us out there have different beliefs. So I think, we can all answer it for ourselves to a degree. But I think that, when you talk of the idea of feeding your soul, even if you don't fully believe in the idea of a soul, like, I think certain things probably come to mind for you, things that you do and you're like, oh, wow, like I need to do that more, in the park with friends, putting your phones down during dinner, things like that. It can be small things, right? Just things that feed your soul in a way that the phone doesn't. A really common analogy, but one that I love with the phone is that it's like junk food. Like if you're hungry, you have the option of junk food. You have the option of, broccoli, kale, like something healthy, like a full sustaining proper meal. The full sustaining proper meal is harder. You have to make it. You have to get all the ingredients. The junk food is right there. Open your pantry, bag of chips, boom. It's kind of scratches that itch, but it doesn't truly fulfill the desire that's there. And sure enough, an hour later, 20 minutes later, you need more, right? Whereas that full sustaining meal, even though it takes more effort initially, it sustains you for longer. It fully, addresses that underlying issue. In the same way, the phone, right? Like you said, it's a natural reflex to try to ease yourself when you're anxious or uncertain or perhaps even lonely. Social media is like, junk food for our social lives. It's a very easy, if you're feeling lonely, it's a very easy, kind of quick fix. You don't have to go arrange to see a friend. You can see photos of your friends right away. But is it the same thing? No, it's not, and that's why James is writing this letter. And that's why 81% of people say they're on their phone too much, is because we all recognize that it's not quite the same thing.
Right. And to James's point about spiritual diet, what are ways that we can satisfy that hunger in our spiritual diet, make it stronger? Well, there are a few. One is and is it equal? No, maybe not, but in many ways it actually satisfies the hunger even more. It really helps. Some of the ways that can be done is to focus less on the noise and focus more on the action. So for example, like doing service activities, sure, helping someone out, doing something that involves actually being with that person. But it also at the same time doesn't have to be, if you're not a social person, that's why you're on your phone. You could also do a lot of service stuff off on the screen, off camera, and there's a lot of things to help. You could be our social media guy. That's one way you could do it. Another one is being ways that expel your creativity, that boosts your creativity. There's sure, many ways. Do some artwork. You know, there's many ways to do that. Another way is having real conversations with people. Yeah, having coffee with them, brunch with them, going on a walk with them, getting on a phone call with them. A lot of times back in the day, they would say like, spend less time on your phone. But really, what do we use our phone for? We don't even use it to have conversations with people. How often do you actually call someone? Most people just use it to play games.
Sometimes you call people like, what the hell is this guy
it
doing?
goes immediately to
This guy's a psychopath? He's
my
calling me.
voicemail hasn't been changed for like 15 years. It's,
Really?
it's me like with
Or I should
pure,
call
like
it.
it's like puberty voice.
Wow, I should call it. See,
You
this
know?
kind of addresses your point. We've been friends for a while. I've never heard your voicemail because I guess I don't
it's-
call you.
Or I pick up quickly. I don't even
guess
let
so.
you get to your voicemail. I'm like, no, you don't want to hear it. And so really, we need to satisfy, and it comes back to it without being so spiritual, but we need to satisfy our spirit, not just our senses at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I mean, let's get into it. Let's get into the practical advice. I think one of the easiest ways to decrease, your phone use is to do it with friends. I think that's part of so there's this guy, Jonathan Haidt. He wrote this book called The Anxious Generation. And he describes, so he talks about phones specifically with young adults, teenagers, children, and how it's becoming this, big problem. He brings in a bunch of stats, but he refers to phone use as a collective action problem. The idea that all of us collectively, 81% of us, agree that phone use is out of control, it's too much, and yet we're also doing it. The idea being that if I don't have my phone, if I don't participate, then I'll lose out, or I'll miss out on whatever's going on online, or all my friends are doing it and I'm not. So a great way to address that is by getting a group of friends together that maybe feel the same way. And look, ask around. If you think your friends don't feel the same way, 4 out of 5 of them will, according to the stats. And this is in 2022. I'm sure that in the 3 years since, that number's only gone up. So bring a group of friends together and say, hey, every Monday we're going to hang out. We're going to leave our phones, at the front door. We're not going to, there's even some friends and actually groups of families that are now, they're all getting landlines for their children because they want their children to be connected. These are like, 6, 8, 10-year-olds. They want their children to be connected, but they don't want a phone. So they all collectively are like, okay, let's all get a bunch of landlines and let's, do it the old school way. And it's great, So like there's creative solutions like that. There's also like research-backed solutions. There's specific stuff that I use as well on my phone. We can get into that. I'm not sure if you have anything to say on this topic.
I was gonna just say and I feel like you've done this, and some of my friends have done this. It's hard to do because it's just so around us. Like our phones are kind of like built into our MacBooks, and so it's hard to sort of disconnect fully.
Sure.
But like one of the things I ask myself is, what kind of rest actually restores me? Like really going down to it. And what are some ways we can do that? I think having a tech-free window, just like how you say when people walk in, putting their phones, but actually setting aside an hour or two of your day, take that and be consistent wherever it is. So you're like looking forward to it. And when you have that tech-free, put that phone away, put on silent, go to the gym, go do something, journal, say a prayer, or just sit there in silence.
Yeah.
And just sit in your own thoughts. I think a lot of times we can't sit in our own thoughts. We can't be present. We're always looking forward to the past and the future and reliving moments in our lives. Just sit there in the present and just think about your day. Think about who you want to be, your goals in life, and why a lot of successful people, I find, like individuals who like that are athletes or like millionaires and billionaires, one thing that they're very consistent about is, they look at their phone, but they're very intentional with when they look at their phone. And one thing they do is they get up at like 4:00 in the morning. They get up, many of them don't even look at their phone till like 7 a.m. They're out, they're doing their gym, they go, they swim, they shower, they do everything. Then after all that, they look at their phone.
Right.
And now they feel extremely refreshed and back to their old ways. But keeping that resetting that pattern that you've been doing every single day is nice to just put an hour aside and say, you know what, this is just for myself today.
I agree. I mean, I remember hearing a talk on phone use, and it was a professor in a, sort of lecture environment. And they asked, the students to raise their hand. How many of you, like, okay, you can count the first 5 things you do in the morning. Like, how many of you, your phone is one of those first 5 things? You open your eyes, you get out of bed, you check your phone, you brush your teeth, you check your phone, and like everyone raised their hand. And then also he said, like, how many of you can remember the last time your phone was more than an arm's length away, right? And none of them raised their hand. Like those 2 things sort of got to me. One small thing I do is I have a charger for my phone by my front door. And I, try to remember to, like put it there when I get home, like just how you hang up your keys, I just put my phone there. Cause when I'm home and I need to work or whatever, I can use my computer for that. It's less distracting. But then, if I don't remember to put it there every night, I walk out, and put it there by the front door before I go to bed. That way, when I wake up, my phone, because it's so easy, when you're waking up, your willpower is maybe not all there. Your brain hasn't fully booted up yet, and you can just grab your phone and boom, you're down a rabbit hole. But if you can instead, those first few decisions of your day are so crucial, like you mentioned, that can really pivot your whole day. The other thing that you mentioned, which I think we should touch on briefly, is this idea of mindfulness. You said like getting yourself out of autopilot. That is, I think, a really crucial thing. And, I know that I'm kind of beating a dead horse here when I'm talking about meditation. I'm joining a long line of people that have recommended meditation on a podcast, but it really is transformational. And it just like I was mentioning, I've used this analogy so many times, the gym, right? Where it's like, as you practice something, you get better and better at it. And eventually it can even become reflexive. The same thing is true of meditation, where if you give your brain 20 or 30 minutes, of silence each day, at first it's incredibly difficult. Just like how if you've never been to the gym before, it'll be incredibly difficult. But over time you build this capacity, and what you were mentioning, sort of reflexively opening an app, I find that when I'm in like a really solid streak of meditating, it's much easier for me to catch myself, not be on autopilot. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to be doing this, do I? It's such a useful tool. It's not easy, meditation is certainly not easy, especially to get into, but there's 30-day programs you can look up online. Many of them are free. If you look on YouTube and you just say, okay, for the next 30 days, I'm going to every day do this, leave my phone by the front door, maybe open it on my computer, play the thing, meditate when I wake up, meditate before I go to bed. You would be surprised at how much it can help you. There's a book called The Power of Now. You talked about being present. Excellent book. I would say it changed my life. But yeah, mindfulness is a really big part of this.
That's very true. And one thing, the last few things I'll say is that again, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be watching those memes or laughing at those.
Matteen's like, you're not taking away my memes, right?
So it is about leisure at the end of the day. But it comes down, and we've said it multiple times, but it's about when you consume mindfully. Balance is important. Anything you do, balance your life is important. I don't know what the average or what the general amount of time on your phone should be in a day. Again, it also determines of your career and what you do.
Right.
If you're a student, maybe you shouldn't be on your phone as much. But if you're someone who works in the field where you're constantly on the phone picking up calls, you can't completely put it aside.
Sure.
But that's why things like journaling and going on a walk is important, because you can listen to music and you can do things, you can respond to text messages and still kind of be here and there. But what we're talking about is this mindless scrolling where like you're supposed to do a task, and instead now you just like went on TikTok, and the algorithms are built so that they keep you, like you said, millions of people are being paid thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be sort of create programs and ways to hook you on. And like Amazon, for example, like is building up new ways to say like, buy now, do this, credit cards already on file, just like ship it to you. And then it's like sometimes it arrives within a few hours. And so these are just ways to kind of keep you on the app and
it's getting too easy.
It's getting too easy to sort of also to stay on, and very hard to let go. And so I would really say that consume mindfully. Even entertainment can, even if it's fresh, can still drain you. So just be mindful of that. Be mindful of yourself, and again, be mindful of the people you spend time with. Maybe the people that you're with are spending a lot of times on their phones, and you need to be the one that stands out and says, "Hey, guys, come on, like let's go do something else, and like let's go on a hike." Everybody has to leave their phone in their car. Only one person can bring it, for emergency situations. So
sure, I like that. Yeah. The idea of like mindfully consuming, like you said, for me, I've personally found the difference between me checking my phone and that turns into me like sitting on the couch for an hour and then being like, oh crap, I like need to go get work done. I've fallen way behind. Like that's not a great feeling, versus me getting work done during the day and then saying, okay, I'm going to intentionally set aside like 8 to 9 p.m. is my like veg out time. I can do whatever. That it's just such a better feeling to feel like you're in the driver's seat. The last sort of pieces of advice I'll share are very practical. So what I personally do, I have this software called Cold Turkey on my computer. It allows you to customize all this stuff. I love it. It's an excellent investment. There's also something called 1Sec, which I use on my phone. It's spelled SEC, like second. And it basically is doing what we're talking about, where in order to open an app that you've deemed to be sort of like, addictive, or you're using it too much, it'll make you pause for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You can configure it. And you have to sort of ask yourself, do I really want to open this right now? Or is this just my reflex? And it's interesting. There's actually been some research done in Germany. This guy, Dr. David J. Gruning, he's from Heidelberg University. So he studied this app in particular, 1Sec, and found that it decreased the opening of apps that people deemed addictive by 57% over 6 weeks. So it's actually kind of been studied. I'm obviously not paid by, 1Sec. I'm paying them actually, because I subscribe to the app.
As much as we know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm paying them. They're not paying me. But I like it a lot, and it's helped me a lot. And then also just 2 books that I've read that have helped. Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke. She talks about addiction in general, and how the neural pathways, neurotransmitters within our brains work. She's got a fascinating story of addiction herself. She talks about all these patients she's seen. There's also Atomic Habits by James Clear, a classic book recommended, universally. Also not being unique by recommending this on a podcast, but it really helps you understand, how we form habits and how habits control like 80% of our day and how we can slowly reshape them. So hopefully that's helpful.
Just put the code word JASON and we get 2% off.
I wish.
Your thing. Just kidding. That's not gonna happen.
We don't. Yeah. Anyway, James, I hope that was helpful, and I hope everyone else enjoyed listening. For those that don't know, we're a very young, new podcast. We could certainly use your support getting off the ground. If you know anyone that you think might enjoy this episode, please send it to them. Of course, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, but sharing it is really the most impactful thing you can do, and will help us get this podcast off the ground. And you can also write in, like we said, this is a listener submitted question. In fact, every episode we do one. So if you'd like to write in, there's a link in the description, and perhaps we'll get the chance to talk through your question on the podcast and grow together as a community.
Yeah, that'd be great. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
All right. See ya. Bye.